You are the founder of the OCPD Foundation. OCPD, not to be confused with OCD, is Obsessive Compulsive Personality Disorder. You got the extra P in there. It stands for personality. It is a disorder that people that have it seems to be very successful in life, but they piss off a lot of people. I know that because, well, it apparently runs in my family. While my father has never been diagnosed with it, I have no doubt that he has it. I have seen the way he acts, the way he behaves, the way he does go about his business, and the symptoms of OCPD fit him to a T. I've never really gotten along with him much when I was growing up. Astrologically speaking, it's kind of understood because I'm a tiger and he's a monkey, and if you know your astrology, they don't really get along well. But I hope to get along with him in the sense that I'm an Aries and he's a Sagittarius, and we should get along in terms of fire signs. But the problem is, people with OCPD, they tend to drive a lot of people crazy with their rigidity and stubbornness over how they get very anxious when things don't happen, when things happen that they don't perceive as right, and also how they seem to believe that you should do this or shouldn't do that. And when it comes to money, they're always of the opinion that it is the money that you should hoard for future catastrophes, and not the actual objects. I seem to beg to differ with my parents on this, not just my father, but my mother too. My mother doesn't seem to have any issues or anything with mental illness or all, but they both seem to not really subscribe to the whole buying gold and silver thing like I do. I'm more interested in getting gold and silver, and I would rather hoard objects that you can buy with money and save them until expiration date rather than hoard money for future catastrophes. And because of that, there's been rifts in my family growing up, so it makes perfect sense to have someone like you on the show to talk about this. Do you have OCPD? And if you do, then well, okay, how is it? How do people with OCPD differ from each other? What is it that one person that has it would be different than another person that has it? I mean, not some people that don't have all the symptoms. One symptom that my father doesn't seem to have is the people with OCPD don't like to throw away things of sentimental value. My father doesn't care about throwing away things because he seems to always have more than enough money from retirement savings to buy anything new, so that's not an issue. But all the other symptoms of OCPD he fits to a T. So I babbled long enough. Nice intro there, but like I said, it does resonate with me very well. I had to get you on my show to help make sense of this, and maybe hopefully after this interview I can get along with my old man better. I hope that's what I can get to this. So why don't you got the floor. Tell us who you are from a primary source perspective, what you experienced, what you do that causes you the stuff that you do, and then you can go ahead and get into your little monologue soliloquy about what OCPD is, and then I'll jot down notes if I hear anything important, and ask you some serious questions. You got the floor.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, and yeah, I'm excited for our conversation. I do have OCPD, so I will do my best not to take anything personally. But I started, time flies, so I'm going to say 5 years ago. I think it's longer now. Might be more like 6.5 years ago. I started a YouTube channel, OCPD, My Life in Debris. Partly chose the title because it rhymed, but also because at the time I started the channel, I wasn't doing very well in terms of my mental health. It's hard to say, it was so long ago, you know, my motivations for starting the channel, but it was more for myself, I think, than anything at the very beginning. I just needed an outlet to talk about the things that I was going through. I was also making some changes in my life at the time in terms of therapy, medication, and I also thought it might be interesting to document what I was going through and to see if there were changes. So I put the channel together. Within a reasonably short amount of time, I decided to start a blog where I would just put the transcripts for people that didn't want to watch the videos. They could have access to the information that I was putting together. And then more time passed, and I realized that this actually was reaching people. I was quite shocked to have anybody watching the videos. And as the audience grew, I kind of took it a little bit more seriously in terms of presenting information, and I expanded the blog. This was over the course of a couple of years into a website with some resources for people that were looking for more information on OCPD. And then more recently, I had a business that didn't survive COVID, and I had some time to reflect, and I decided that I wanted to kind of put all of my efforts into helping people with OCPD, and also helping people such as yourself who have family, friends, loved ones. Maybe they work with somebody or for somebody with OCPD. Help them to help that person, but also, as you know, it can be challenging at the best of times if you have somebody with severe OCPD in your life. So, that's a broad, group of people that I was hoping to reach. So what I've done is I have it's official. I've created this foundation, the OCPD Foundation. It's going to in the beginning, is primarily going to be a exhaustive online resource, and that is going to go live in about a month's time. I've been working on this well over a year, and we're going to go live with it in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So currently, it's still just the kind of online authority site. There's nothing online at present that represents the foundation, but we hope to have that up very, very soon. And we can get into, as we talk, what's going to be available for people on the foundation website. But that's kind of the condensed version of my journey to get here. I guess the other thing would be that through therapy, some healthy lifestyle choices, and just a lot of perseverance and hard work and support from some people that I have in my life, I've been able to rise above a lot of the OCPD traits that I've had with me since probably my teens. And so OCPD doesn't really play a large part in my life anymore. There are holdover symptoms. There's depression and anxiety that I still go to therapy for. At the present, I have those also pretty well in check, but I'm aware that they're always kind of there in the background, and then I need to be mindful of that and to watch out for the signs. But more or less, I'm sitting here in front of you today feeling pretty good. And and I'm really happy to be able to answer any of these questions and to see what's going on with your experiences, and to see if I can provide any more insight.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind me smoking my pipe during the show. It's very shamanic and helps clear out any negativity. I'm a very spiritual guy, so
no problem.
All the anti-smokers, shame on you. You don't know what tobacco is actually not bad for you, like it's all been lied to about it and everything. But anyhow, when OCPD as an illness, if it should be called an illness, I have researched it because a lot of people have raised issues with my father, who always came across as a bit of a prick to a lot of people regarding how he his beliefs and his attitudes towards life. He would always he's not a bad man, but he would get very anxious if things happened that he didn't perceive as right. He would do yard work like crazy to cope from coping from the everyday hassles of life. Believed in hoarding money and all that, and it was always an issue with friends and all that couldn't stand how he would always seem to find a way to get pissed off about something. And the attitude of people with OCPD is they say people that have it are successful in life because they believe in hard work and saving money, but the problem is their attitude. towards things is going to drive other people crazy. I'm sure that you know a thing or two about that, so why don't you expand on that and help people make sense of why OCPD people are the way they are, and what can, if there's anything that OCPD people can do when their symptoms start really taking into effect, what they can do and what other people can do that witness them taking into effect can do to try to suppress them and make things a little more
yeah. There's a lot to unpackage. I guess the really important thing to know right out the gate is that this isn't a set of OCPD isn't just a set of symptoms. It's not a bunch of traits that if you do A, B, C, or D, then you have OCPD. It's a mindset. It's a way of thinking. There are people with severe OCPD. There are people with mild OCPD. The estimates range from anywhere from 1% up to 8% of the population, which is an astounding number. I personally doubt that it's that high, but in terms of having some traits, maybe. So the way of thinking is that there's two primary kind of modes of thinking. One is this perfectionist mindset, striving for levels of perfection. And this can apply to a lot of different areas, and it's going to be different for everybody. Some, a severe case, maybe it applies to all areas, but for more moderate cases, maybe there's a few areas in life where this perfection mindset applies. And you mentioned people being very successful. That is true in a lot of cases. A lot of people will put their careers and their professions ahead of family, friends, personal goals, passions, hobbies, all of that sort of thing, to the detriment of the quality of their life. There is an opposite path that people can take with the perfection mindset, and I've experienced both. So in my 20s, I was more of that mindset that I just described. And through a system of or a bunch of failures that I had in business, and then a couple of failed very serious relationships, including marriage, I got very disheartened over time. And so I ended up kind of transferring over to the other way that OCPD can manifest in terms of perfection, which is a fear of not doing things to your standard. And of course, we're talking about very, very high standards for somebody with OCPD. And that kind of freezes you in life, and you end up becoming a kind of a chronic procrastinator. So outwardly, they look like two very different things. You've got somebody that kind of is afraid to do anything, or you've got somebody that is pursuing their profession at the highest level. But both are coming from the same sort of mindset that things have to be done to perfection. And then secondarily, the other sort of mindset that motivates a lot of the traits is black and white thinking. This would be something is either clean or dirty, something is organized or disorganized, something is good or bad, something is right or wrong. And this could apply to like an argument between two people trying to figure out if the Beatles or the Rolling Stones were a better band. And if one of those people had OCPD, they're not going to believe that it's a matter of opinion. They're going to say that this is a fact. Whichever band it is, this is the best band. It's indisputable. You're just wrong. And I think this might be a lot of what you maybe encounter with your father, that sort of thinking where it's my way or the highway. And again, this isn't everybody with OCPD. This sort of thinking is, but to the extremes that they take it is different for everyone. And so I do talk with a lot of people through the work that I do that are in a similar situation to yours, and they're suffering. I don't think everybody that's in a relationship with someone with OCPD or has a family member is suffering, but a lot are. And I'm very empathetic to what you are going through and what other people are going through in terms of having that person in their life and what their rules and their standards. and what their choices are in terms of how they affect those around them. And so I guess that's where I would start with it. Is it's a mindset, and it's not as much about looking at like the individual things that they're doing, but understanding where they're coming from. The not meeting those standards is going to cause a high level of distress. You mentioned anxiety. And so for me, early on, when I didn't do things the right way, for me, it was painful. And I had some awareness of the damage that it was doing. I wasn't completely blind to it, but that's the compulsion aspect of it as well, right? Is where even when we know we're causing harm, we feel compelled to continue with these with these high standards and rules and opinions that don't line up with everybody else. And so, yeah, I'll give you a chance to kind of respond to that. But that's where, if your father has OCPD, that's where those thoughts are coming from, and you're seeing how it's manifest.
Well, yeah, one thing about people with OCPD, they don't seem to suffer from drug abuse problems, because their rigidity and like wanting to be in control enables them to not have an addictive personality. I've noticed that with my father. He claims that he tried a few things back in the day, but after he tried it, he thought, okay, it's not in my best interest to do this. I'm not going to do it. And he didn't continue with that. And he doesn't binge drink or anything, like a glass of beer a day or a glass of wine a day. And that seems to be good for him and all. So when it comes to addiction, in general, are people with OCPD pretty safe, knowing that they don't have addictive personalities? And on the similar note, when it comes to medication is something that, oh boy, I never really trust big pharma. I certainly think there's definitely a lot of true conspiracies behind that. And SSRI medication is the kind that they say that people with OCPD should take. But is it really in your best interest to take a synthetic pill that is just going to screw with your brain and cause side effects that are probably going to affect you in the future? Now, I had, when my parents thought I was mentally depressed after I finished junior high school, they kind of forced me to see a psychiatrist against my will, and forced me to take medication against my will. I'm not going to show it now, but I actually have an enlarged right breast, and I have no doubt that that was caused by the Risperdal that they forced me to take against my will. And I don't know if Risperdal is a medication for people that OCPD would take, but in general, they say SSRIs are probably, if you do want to take medication, that would be the one to take. But then again, why take medication? There are much better ways to do it. Big pharma is a total fraud. It's a scam. It just wants to sucker you into being complacent and all that. It's not worth it. Do you agree that it's not in your best interest to take medication? And if there are medications to take, what would you say? Okay, if you want to, this is the kind to do it.
Yeah, so I'll go back to your first point, because it was an interesting one, and then I can address the medication. In terms of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, addiction, those numbers, as far as I can tell, are pretty low in terms of people with OCPD. That does correspond with the rigidity that you mentioned, but there is, if you want to, really dive deep into OCPD, right? There's two trains of thought with a lot of mental health issues, which is, is it something that you're born with? Is it nature, or is it something that you develop as a result of your environment, which would be nurture? And I think most people, most doctors would lean more towards the nurture side in terms of OCPD, or maybe there's a quality that lies dormant, and if we're exposed to the right environments or the wrong environments, that might kind of kickstart the OCPD. And so on the nurture side, we find that a lot of people have come from some sort of a chaotic background, maybe even somebody that had OCPD that was incredibly demanding. And so what happens a lot of times later on is in terms of OCPD, you essentially get somebody that is really fearful of losing control. And so they exert that control on others a lot of times, but almost in every case, they're exerting that control over themselves. So just to go back to the drug thing, then it's not just the rigidity, but it's also this self-control that plays into why you don't see a lot of addiction issues with people with OCPD. They want to be in control. And so taking a psychedelic or an upper or downer, it's going to take away that feeling of control. And so that's not a pleasurable experience for most people with this disorder. In terms of pharmacology, I'm definitely very much of the opinion that each person needs to make their own choice. I do agree with you in the sense of big pharma being a big evil. I don't necessarily think that means that everything they produce is bad for us, but I do think that they don't have necessarily our best interests at heart. And so I think that that's a decision that every person needs to think long and hard about. There is no particular medication that treats OCPD. The medications that are prescribed are generally for the anxiety or depression that may come out from having OCPD. There are some medications that have had some level of success with people with OCD, which is, as you mentioned at the start, it's something very different. But there's nothing that directly is supposed to treat OCPD. The SSRIs that you mentioned, I have personal experience with them. For me, the side effects were very intense, very unpleasant, and I would much rather participate in healthy activities, take natural supplements, and go to therapy. That's my personal choice. So, and I'm sure you agree, it's up to each individual, what they want to put into their body. But in terms of pharmacology, I'm not a huge fan. And I think if you're seeing somebody that really knows what they're doing and they really care about the patients, for most people, you should I hate saying like what you should or shouldn't do, but it's not a good idea, I think, in a lot of cases, to stay on this stuff long term. I think that these medications can sometimes serve to help people get over a hump, especially at the start of therapy. Just to kind of even motivate themselves to attend therapy can be tough, and sometimes going on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication can get people through a tough period until they're more comfortable getting off of them and attending therapy without being on medication. And most of the doctors that I've spoken with that I do trust, that's their opinion, that these are aids. They're not something that people should be on for life. They're not something people should be on long term, but they can be they can assist in short bursts, I guess.
Yeah, another thing with people with OCPD, the issue of hoarding money, believing that it's something that should be hoarded for future catastrophes, it drove so many people crazy. A lot of my friends were like, what's your father got to worry about? He's going to get a heart attack worrying about the things that he worries about. Like he would, the fact is, I was kind of born, not with a silver spoon in my mouth, but a copper spoon in my mouth. Parents who worked really hard, had a lot of money, never really had to worry about going to bed hungry because we were always financially stable. But even the slightest accident that caused financial distress would cause my father to go ballistic. Even just having to take a small drop out of the pocket for like a little insurance deductible made him go crazy. And people were like, what's your dad's problem? There are people starving in Africa who are barely able to get through day by day, and your father, who has so much money in the bank to get through everyday life, is worried about things. So is there any hope to get these people to realize, okay, you're kind of worrying about that which is not worth worrying about. Or is it, okay, that's just the way they are. They're going to worry if they get a heart attack. Well, that's their problem. I hate to say
Mm.
that, but it
No,
seems like,
I get it. Yeah.
yeah, because my father actually had to go to the hospital at least once with some sort of a heart condition problem, and whether it was stress related, I don't know.
Right.
But it was very disturbing to see that this is the way he reacted. And don't even get me started on how some people actually tried to bully and pick on my father and me because they actually thought it was so pathetic the way he would do things, that they actually thought it was worth picking on me and him to
Mm.
as a way of showing you get your act together or something. Well, you
Yeah.
see where I'm going. Why
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
expand on this?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough, right? Because a lot of people that are in, have somebody in their life that has OCPD. A lot of people are suffering. They're frustrated, and I don't use that term lightly. Not all people with OCPD are abusive. I've the number of people I've talked to over the past 5 years is quite large, and there's a huge range of how people manifest their OCPD. But in amongst those people, there are people that are abusive. There are people that, the term, jerk is going to apply. There's a bunch of other words that you could use. And so the situation that you find yourself in is that you're frustrated, you're upset at times, and you've got to balance this. Do I want to help this person, or do I want to do the thing that's best for me, or are those the same thing? Do I want to have this person in my life? And it is a really tough, and it's sometimes heartbreaking situation and decisions that people have to make. I think that the sooner you're able to recognize that somebody in your life is likely to have these traits, or potentially have OCPD, the sooner that the sooner you find out, the more energy you're going to have to tackle this issue, right? If you've been living with somebody for 10 years and you come across OCPD online and think, this is what it is, but I've lost 10 years of my life. Do you really have the motivation and the energy to then put towards helping this person? Or is it you that really needs the help at this point? And so I have to balance that, and I have to keep in mind when I'm talking to people that those are two separate thoughts, going in two separate directions that people are having. If this person's going to be in your life, if that person, if removing yourself from the situation isn't an option, or it's not an option that you want to take, then it is going to be in your best interest to help that person. And then it becomes, how do you help that person, and what's that going to be like for me? And it's not going to be easy, right? You can't just go up to somebody that you think has OCPD and say, hey man, you've got OCPD, you got to see somebody, this is driving me crazy. You've got to come from a much more kind, empathetic, loving position, and that's hard to do with somebody that may be mistreating you, and I recognize that. In terms of the miserliness, the hoarding of the money, telling him the facts of the situation is clearly not going to change what he does. But you can start to express how the hoarding of the money is having a negative impact, whether that's on your emotional state, whether that's on your family dynamic, by kind of gently presenting this information and saying, hey, when you do this, like, I don't feel that great about it. And I don't know if you're aware, but this isn't how most people go about this. And have you ever thought that maybe your way of thinking is a little bit skewed? You ever considered talking to somebody? And I'm like, this is a very condensed, this isn't a conversation that would take place in 5 minutes. This is a conversation that might take place over 5 weeks. But it's tough. It's not easy. OCPD is incurable, but that's only in the technical sense. You can absolutely get treatment, and you can absolutely get over these traits. And again, it's not the traits as much as the way of thinking. And that's why therapy is important, because it's really what's going on inside that is causing all of these things to take place. And so in your position or anybody in your position, the number one thing you want to do is to get that person into therapy. And that is that's hard for anybody to do in any instance with any mental illness. It's not easy to convince somebody that there's something wrong and that they should go do something about it. This can be with the physical as well. It can be hard to get people to go to a regular doctor sometimes. But it's really about having the tools and knowing what the best way is to approach that person. Being accusatory, getting upset with them, that might be fair. That might be fair in your eyes. It might be fair in other people's eyes. And I mean, I don't disagree with it. I'm thinking back now on people, when I was in my 20s and it was really, really bad, the kind of interactions I had with people. They didn't love me. They weren't happy with the way I was treating them. And they had every right to be. But that didn't help me, and that didn't help the situation. And so, that's where, unfortunately, the responsibility, kind of falls in the hands of those that care about this person the most. And I have no judgment on people that have had to remove themselves from this situation. I know plenty of people that have been in relationships with OCPD and they had to end those relationships, and I completely get it. But if it's a relationship that you want to maintain, or if it's somebody that's going to be in your life, I think using kindness, even when it's it feels really, really unfair to do so, is your best path.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to say the rest of this interview will be pay-per-view. Everybody who wants to listen to the rest of this, please subscribe to my Patreon account to listen to the rest of this. I have a few more questions. Let's try to maybe keep it to 45 minutes. We're starting to heat up. I want to be able to do hour shows again, but as long as I have this computer, I don't